You know, there's small, and then there's small. Welcome to my channel. My name is Chris, and I am a photographer out of Denver, Colorado. Today, I'm talking about the Fujifilm X-T50, how I got it, why I like it so much, and what I think of it overall. I've had it for about 6 months now, so this is just a general review. A little backstory. A couple of years ago, early 2023, I did a video about the X-T5. And I was really impressed with the 40 megapixel sensor. I was in love with the IBIS. And I said, what would be really interesting is if they took that and they put it in the X100 body.
Now, where this really gets interesting is if Fuji decides to bring that to the X100 line. Because if they do, and all evidence says that they will, that camera becomes so much more interesting for everyone.
Fast forward to February 2024. I'm on vacation with my family. I actually watch the Fujifilm event where they announced the X100VI, and lo and behold, 40 megapixel sensor IBIS. So I pre-ordered one immediately while I was on vacation. And I thought for sure I was one of the first, but no, I wasn't even close. I waited for my pre-order for a little over a month. B&H never had any updates. I canceled that order, and then Fujifilm announced the X-T50 in the summer of 2024. When they announced it, I made some judgments about it based on the size, based on its design, film sims being a dedicated dial. I just decided that this was a camera for beginners, and it wasn't something I needed to even look at. But over the course of the summer, a lot of photographers I follow were starting to talk more and more about this camera, and they were really loving it. Now, the internals, the processor and the sensor were the same as the X-T5 and the X-H2 and the X100VI. So it was every bit as powerful as those cameras, just in this small body. I decided to go take a look. It is a great little camera. One of the very first pictures I took of it was against my X-T5 in my car. And even though you can tell that the X-T50 is a smaller device, I don't feel the photo does it justice. It isn't just smaller. It just feels entirely different. So the entire feel of the camera is a much different device. The X-T50 doesn't necessarily look that much smaller than the X-T5 when you compare just the body. You take the lens off and you're just body to body. It doesn't really look that much smaller, but in the hand, it is so much smaller. Now, it's not going to fit in your jeans. It's not that kind of pocket, but a jacket pocket, absolutely. Once I got this camera, I realized right away how it was going to become an everyday device, because I was right in the middle of my 365-day project. You know, having a camera that was so easy to take was just, it was easier to take. So I walked around with lenses that I knew would be in service of every day. 18 millimeter Voigtlander, my 27 millimeter Pancake. I also have my lovely 35 millimeter 1.4, which is just about as big a lens as I would want to put on here. And let me show you that. All right. I swear, it's almost like, I mean, I know this lens was designed for the X Pro, the original X Pro, but it fits perfectly on here. This is the 35 millimeter 1.4R. It does not go past the bottom of it, but it aligns almost perfectly with it. It sits on here in such a way that I just feel this has a really classic look to it. And I have a couple of TT Artisan small manual lenses. From an everyday carry standpoint, I mean, this whole kit with these lenses is lighter than my X-T5 with the 23 millimeter 1.4 RWR and my 70-300 zoom lens. And, you know, like that was all much heavier than just this right here. Another thing that I discovered was this little M42 to X mount adapter, which means all these old lenses that I got with my Pentax camera when I got that gift, all these old lenses, these vintage lenses, they become lenses I can use on here as well. Like this 135 millimeter, this is quite fun to use with this little camera. It fits on here really well, and it gives me a focal distance that is pretty crazy on a crop sensor. 135, I'll let you do that 1.5 math. But the point I'm trying to make is what this has turned into is a camera that is really fun. I mean, that's what I've been looking for. This is the essence of Fujifilm. This is like what the X100 really is to me. So not only did I get something that has all the same internals as the X100, I don't get the optical viewfinder. That is a bummer. That style, that design is obviously a beautiful design, very Leica looking. But I do have an EVF, which I love having an EVF. I don't like using my LCD screen to compose, so I do use my EVF. Anyway, all right, so let me get into some strengths, some weaknesses. When I bought the camera, I thought it was too small. I went out and immediately purchased this small rig grip extender thing, and I actually don't like it. When I put it on and it sets on the front of the camera, it ends up being too close to the lenses. And so my fingers get kind of caught in here, and I just don't like that feeling. If you're after purchase, if you're after like a real grip, it is fantastic. You will have a grip on your camera. There's definitely no doubt about that. But I found that getting this little thumb grip that goes in the hot shoe, I found that really helped, give me some control. All right, so the strengths. Well, it turns out that this dial that I thought was for beginners only is a really great thing to have right here. Let me expand on that. On my X-T5, X-H2, X-T50, my X100, I actually didn't play with ISO that much. I have the auto ISO 1, auto ISO 2, and auto ISO 3 set to maximum of 400, maximum of 1600, maximum of 6400. And because I have those 3 settings, I have a button on all my cameras dedicated to those auto ISOs. So I would press the button, choose which auto ISO I wanted for the scene. That was it. Everything else I controlled, shutter speed, aperture, like normal. So I never touched that dial on my X-T5. In fact, it was always locked. It was always locked. I always had it on A because I was changing the auto ISO settings. So on this camera, on the command dial, you can have your shutter speed and your ISO. And it dials not just through the ISO that it can do natively, but it also dials through the auto ISO settings. So I can do auto ISO 1, auto ISO 2, auto ISO 3, or just jump into 125, 200, like I can just do all the ISO with one dial. So I don't have to have a dedicated button anymore and an ISO dial. Then, because the film sims are right here, I find that I use them. Even though on the X-T5, I had this button right here set to open up my film sims, I would press that occasionally, but I wasn't really, that's not what I was doing. So I wouldn't really think about it. But on this camera, because it's right here, because it's so easy to just turn the dial, I turn it. And so I start playing around. And this is how I discovered that I love classic neg. I didn't realize, I was trying to use, I think, Chrome, and I think I was using Pro neg, but I think classic neg has turned into my color of choice. And between that and Acros, which is only 2 clicks away, I have my black and white and I have my color. So I just go click, click, and I'm in color, and I go click, click, and I'm in black and white. And I love having that there. And I know I'm not alone, because if you watch any Nikon ZF reviews, most of the reviewers will talk about how they love having the black and white switch on the dial for the Nikon ZF. I think there's really something to having a physical, I want to go into black and white mode. It changes your perception. It changes your philosophy when you're walking around doing your photography. So having it on this dial is actually a strength, not a weakness. And taking away the ISO didn't hurt me because I use auto ISO anyway. I cannot overstate how the size makes this fun. The size is why this is a special camera. Like if you were on the fence or you were looking at, one of their other camera bodies, I would say try to go into a store and actually compare, because the size of this is truly an amazing achievement. I can kind of understand why they went with these rounded edges. Every little shave that they could shave, they did. So I really like that. Oh, something else I should point out. The exposure dial is smaller than any of the exposure dials I've ever seen on, X100, X Pro, XT. It is smaller, and it actually is harder to turn. And I think this is Fujifilm listening to us talk about how easy that is to bump. I don't bump this, but it's also protected by my thumb grip here. So now I really don't bump it. So that's great. All right, some weaknesses. So when I first got the camera, this Q button was killing me. The Q button is on what I would consider the thumb rest that's sort of built in. I would put my thumb here and my thumb would just kind of roll over onto the Q. I was constantly hitting the Q button, but getting this hot shoe thumb rest has completely eliminated that. Another negative is this auto mode. This auto mode, if you were to switch this to auto, it really is for beginners. It takes over everything. It chooses what to focus on. It chooses the exposure. It chooses all of your exposure triangle. All of that is chosen by the camera. You have no control. You can't do anything when it's an auto. So this is a button I do not use ever because I want to always know what I'm focusing on. So that's a little too much auto for me. Another thing is it does use the older battery. However, I have to be honest here. The way I shoot is about 100 to 150 photos in a 1 to 2 hour photo walk around downtown or places like that. This is plenty of battery for that. In fact, I have a second battery that I've never loaded into the camera. It sits in my bag because by the time I get home, I can just recharge this. It's a negative for some people, but not for me, not for the kind of shooting that I do. Another negative, and this is a big one, this memory card, they put it in a very unfortunate place behind the battery and in front of this door. So when you want to get this out of here, you have to pop it out and it doesn't pop out very far. To get it out is actually really hard. And my fingers aren't that fat. It's just really hard to get a grip on it and get it out. It takes a little effort. Now, the good news on this front is you can open up this door and use a USB-C cable to just plug it into Lightroom on your iPad or on your computer, and Lightroom will see it as a drive and you can load your photos that way. So I actually don't ever pop out my SD card because it's such a pain to get it out. To wrap things up, if you're a hobbyist, if you're like me, if you're somebody who, you're in it for growth, but you're also in it for the love and fun of photography, and you don't need the more professional features of the X-T5, like if you don't need dual SD card slots because you're not worried about losing some client photos, if you don't need the larger battery for all day photos, if you don't need the 8,000 mechanical shutter speed, this one tops out at 4,000. Things like that are a little different in the X-T5. The sensor is the same, the IBIS is the same, all of it is the same, but there's these other more professional features on the X-T5 that you don't get on the X-T50. Now, I recognize that I just didn't need those extra features. And when I got this Lumix for video work and I started using it for photo work, I realized I would rather just have a single hybrid camera with me for video and photo when I'm out in the mountains. So all of a sudden my X-T5 was on the outs again. The X-T5 is a unfortunate loser in my camera rotations. So yeah, I was able to get rid of the X-T5 and get some lenses for this Panasonic Lumix S52X because this made that possible. This was such a capable, wonderful camera that I didn't need to have this and the X-T5. Although I can see a workflow where somebody has an X-T5 and an X-T50. You have X-T5 for your pro work, your wedding work, your client work, and then you have this for your personal, I just want to walk around and have some fun. So they can coexist, absolutely. I had them both for a while, and I think it's a great match. But yeah, the X-T50 has been a wonderful surprise. And I suppose I should probably show you some photos from it. Although you'll notice as you look at these photos, tell me if you can recognize that it's from an X-T50. I mean, they're indistinguishable from an X-T5 or an XH2 and probably an X106. They probably all look very similar, especially if you're using, classic neg. I don't think you would even notice a difference. But some of my very favorite photos I took with this very combination here, the 35 millimeter on this X-T50. I got this fantastic shot, black and white over a path that I just really love. So it is definitely a camera perfectly capable of doing all the things the X-T5 can do in a package that just feels impossibly small. So that's my review of the X-T50. It is a fun camera. It's less expensive than the X-T5, just as capable as the X-T5, and I would encourage anyone, if you got it, to start exploring manual lenses, because these manual lenses are a very inexpensive way to continue having some fun with your camera. That's it. I thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please remember to, give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe, helps the channel grow. And as always, I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one, which will be about these lenses. Bye.